Long ago, when it was dark, it was so dark that the earth was black and the sky was a dark midnight blue. There was an old man. He was making his way through the forest, half blinded by the limbs of trees. In one outstretched hand, he held a small lantern, and in it there was a candle that burned lower and lower. And with his other hand, he pulled himself along as though he were rowing through the great wood. The man, by the looks of him, had once been tall, but now his back was bowed as though he were carrying a sack of grain. His beard and hair were long and gray, matted, and filled with twigs and moss and grass. His nails were uncut, and the nail beds were filled with soil. His skin was wrinkled and furrowed and hung in furbelows from his neck and his armpits. Why, with every step the man took, the bones in his feet burned, and the joints of his knees screamed out to mock the call of the screech owl in the dark wood. The man labored. You could see his heart vibrating in his chest. You could hear his panting as he looked out into the darkness. And there in the distance he saw a twinkling light. And he thought, a hearth, a home, a meal. And he decided at that moment that he would make his way across the dark forest to the home. It took a very long time. He fell and pulled himself along, and soon he arrived at the cabin, just as his candle burned out. He pulled himself up the stairs and was about to knock on the door when he fell forward, pushing the door open, and he spilled onto the floor of the cabin. And there, near a hearth fire, there sat a woman in a rocking chair, knitting. She set down her knitting and she looked at the man. She had a long, thick braid that fell almost to the floor. She ran to the man and she picked him up as though he were her own child. She carried him back to the rocker and she began to rock him there, and she soothed his brow with her hand, saying, "There now, there." The night passed, and soon the midnight hour came, and the old man was gone. And there on her lap there was a young man, sleeping, fit and trim, blonde hair, cuddled up. And still the woman rocked. She rocked through the night, and it was almost dawn. And there in her lap the young man was gone, and there was a child. A little boy all curled up, his fist balled and held close to his chest. His cheeks were red, rouge-like. His hair was like spun gold. And the woman, she plucked 3 hairs from the child's head, and she cast them upon the hearthstone, and each of them rang out. And when the 3rd ring diminished into silence, the little boy woke up, rubbing his eyes. He had the bluest eyes. He looked up at the woman and smiled and slid down from her lap and made his way to the door. He turned back one more time as if to say goodbye, and he pulled the door open and he leapt into the sky to become the new day's sun. And so it has been ever since, a new beginning at the end of every night.